British Prime Minister Keir Starmer finds himself in the eye of a political storm that's shaking the very foundations of UK national security policy. The Labour leader has been forced to publish previously classified witness statements after weeks of mounting pressure over a collapsed China spying case that has exposed deep cracks in Britain's approach to the Chinese threat. This isn't just another Westminster scandal, it's a crisis that reveals how political calculations may have compromised national security prosecutions. The controversy centers around two British men, Christopher Cash and Christopher Barry, who were charged with spying for China but saw their case dramatically collapse last month when the Crown Prosecution Service dropped all charges. Cash, a former parliamentary researcher, and Barry, a teacher, had been accused of passing politically sensitive information to Chinese intelligence agents. Both men denied the allegations, but the sudden collapse of their prosecution has triggered a political earthquake that threatens to engulf Starmer's government. The Crown Prosecution Service made a stunning revelation when explaining why they dropped the charges. They stated that the case collapsed because the government had failed to provide evidence showing that China was considered a threat to UK national security at the time the alleged offenses occurred. This bombshell admission immediately raised questions about whether the government had deliberately withheld crucial evidence to avoid damaging relations with Beijing. Starmer initially tried to deflect blame onto the previous Conservative government, claiming that the fault lay with their policies and approach to China. He argued that the Conservative administration had only described Beijing as an epoch-defining challenge, rather than explicitly labeling it as a national security threat.
In 2021, the previous government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. In 2024, the Minister for Security said from that dispatch box that China poses a threat. But let's leave aside the government. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 in November classified China as a threat in his remarks. How is it possible that the government failed to provide the evidence that the CPS needed to prosecute?
The substantive evidence was provided in 2023 by the previous government. That is when the witness statement was submitted. I am going to disclose it. They will all be able to read it. The substantive evidence was written and disclosed and submitted in 2023 under the last government. I noticed she didn't indicate whether ministers were involved in that at the time. Mr. Speaker, she questions what's in the review, the refreshed review in 2021 and 2023. Let me be clear. The then Foreign Secretary, sitting, I think, over here, the Honourable Member for Braintree, 1 month after the arrest, so absolutely the relevant time, gave a speech at Mansion House. It was called Our Position on China, setting out the government's policy. He said in that speech, summing up China as a threat in one word would be, his words, impossible, impractical, and most importantly, unwise.
This defense strategy backfired spectacularly when the full extent of the government's reluctance to confront China became clear. Former Conservative leader Ian Duncan Smith revealed a crucial detail that would become central to the scandal. The government had repeatedly refused to officially designate China as a threat under the Official Secrets Act, despite MI5's own assessment that China poses the greatest threat to UK freedom. This refusal, critics argue, was driven by a desire to maintain positive trade relations with Britain's second-largest trading partner outside Europe.
The evidence right at the beginning, he's trying to say that the Conservatives didn't have this and therefore it was down to them that it failed. Not at all, because the case went ahead when the Conservatives were in power because the MI5, all the institutions said categorically they pose a threat. In fact, MI5 said they pose the greatest threat to the freedom of the United Kingdom. All they had to do was confirm that and say that they continue to believe China posed a threat. So, you know, the old twisted can't lie straight in bed man himself, he then absolutely refused to do this. Why? Because they're kissing the backside of China at the moment because they want a trade arrangement and they were desperately worried that China would get really hacked off with them for prosecuting them for spying. And the second thing is we've got this ghastly, excuse me, I won't swear, the embassy, a huge mega embassy, the largest in Europe, and they're going to drive that one through while they're at it as well with 200 extra spies in the United Kingdom. This is a government that should be arraigned, I'm afraid, for unpatriotic activities.
Totally. I mean, one of the statements within the witness statement that we've seen says this: the government's position is that we will cooperate where we can, compete where we need to, and challenge where we must, including on issues of national security. However, it is important for me to emphasise, this comes from Matthew Collins, that the UK government is committed to pursuing a positive relationship with China to strengthen understanding, cooperation and stability.
The political pressure became unbearable when accusations of a cover-up began circulating in Westminster. Critics argued that Starmer's government had deliberately sabotaged the prosecution to avoid antagonizing China. The suggestion that economic interests had trumped national security considerations struck at the heart of the government's credibility on defense matters. Faced with this mounting crisis, Starmer was forced to make an unprecedented move. He announced that he would publish the full witness statements provided to prosecutors by Matthew Collins, Britain's Deputy National Security Advisor. This decision marked a dramatic reversal from the government's previous position and represented a clear capitulation to opposition pressure. The published documents revealed the extent of Chinese espionage activities against the UK. Collins's statements detailed what he described as large-scale espionage campaigns by China targeting British democratic institutions and parliamentarians, including the Electoral Commission. The documents explicitly stated that China presents the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security and described an active espionage threat posed by Beijing. However, the publication of these documents only deepened the mystery surrounding the case's collapse. If the government possessed such clear evidence of Chinese threats, why hadn't it been sufficient to sustain the prosecution? The answer appears to lie in the specific legal requirements of the case and the timing of when different assessments were made. What made matters worse was the revelation that Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Collins had submitted written evidence that allegedly led to the prosecution's collapse. Government officials claimed Collins was acting entirely alone without consulting his superiors. This narrative faced immediate scrutiny from opposition leaders who found it implausible that such a critical national security decision could be made by a deputy official in isolation. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch forensically dismantled this explanation during Prime Minister's questions, demanding to know if Starmer genuinely expected Parliament to believe that Collins never discussed this momentous decision with his boss or any senior officials. When pressed directly on whether only one Deputy National Security Advisor was responsible for the failure, the Prime Minister surprisingly answered yes, then awkwardly backtracked with explanations about evidence.
The CPS said that they were satisfied that the decision to charge the case in April 2024, not August, in April 2024, was correct on the basis of where the law stood at that time. This is a matter of fact. It is not a matter of what the previous government had thought. It is not a matter of it not meeting a legal test. It did. Something must have changed when the charges were brought and when the case collapsed. The charges were brought under us. The case collapsed under them. Can the Prime Minister tell us what changed and what collapsed the case?
Mr. Speaker, I've said I will publish the witness statements in full. The whole House will then see exactly what was set out in 2023 in the substantive witness statement and exactly what was set out in the two supplementary witness statements, and she will then realise what she's just said is entirely baseless.
The scandal took another dramatic turn when it emerged that Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor himself, had attended a crucial meeting about the China spy case despite initial government denials about his involvement.
And of course, we are forced to believe by Keir Starmer and his hoods that this guy acted completely and utterly on his own. Matthew Collins decided that he didn't want to cooperate with prosecutors in a very, very, what you might call sensitive public prosecution of spies inside the, as I said, the Palace of Westminster. It just beggars belief. It's nonsense, isn't it?
It's complete nonsense. I mean, I'm sanctioned, as you said earlier. I've also had spies involved with me from China, wolf warriors, as they're called, low-level people impersonating me. Others have as well. This has been going on forever. The key thing was this: he didn't actually even have to say enemy. All they had to say was that it was perceived that China posed a threat. It's a very simple, low bar to set. The evidence right at the beginning, he's trying to say that the Conservatives didn't have this and therefore it was down to them that it failed. Not at all, because the case went ahead when the Conservatives were in power because The MI5, all the institutions said categorically they pose a threat. In fact, MI5 said they pose the greatest threat to the freedom of the United Kingdom. All they had to do was confirm that and say that they continue to believe China posed a threat. So, you know, the old twisted can't lie straight in bed man himself, he then absolutely refused to do this. Why? Because they're kissing the backside of China at the moment, because they want a trade arrangement, and they were desperately worried that China would get really hacked off with them for prosecuting them for spying. And the second thing is, we've got this ghastly, excuse me, I won't swear, the embassy.
IAEA Duncan Smith exposed this deception, revealing that after weeks of denying Powell's participation, the government was forced to admit he had indeed been present at key discussions. Duncan Smith argued it was impossible that Powell, as the government's most senior security official, didn't influence the decision to drop the prosecution. The Crown Prosecution Service had needed evidence showing that China was considered a threat at the specific time when the alleged offenses occurred, between 2021 and 2023. While Collins' statements detailed Chinese malign activities, they apparently fell short of the unequivocal declaration that prosecutors required to proceed with the case. This technical failure had catastrophic consequences for the prosecution. The political fallout has been severe for Starmer's government. Conservative politicians have seized on the revelations to paint Labour as weak on national security and overly concerned with maintaining good relations with China at any cost. They've particularly focused on the fact that Starmer was reportedly informed about the case's potential collapse just days before it happened, but chose not to intervene. The timing of Starmer's knowledge about the case's problems has become a crucial point of contention. His office confie argued that he learned the prosecution was in danger of collapsing only a couple of days before it actually happened. The government maintains that any intervention would have been inappropriate, but critics argue that earlier action could have saved the case. This defense raises uncomfortable questions about the government's handling of sensitive national security matters. If the Prime Minister knew that a major espionage case was about to collapse due to evidentiary problems, why wasn't more done to address these issues? The suggestion that political considerations prevented necessary action has only fueled further criticism. The published witness statements reveal another troubling aspect of the case. One document from December 2023 alleged that Cash had been passing information to China about who was briefing former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on China policy. This revelation suggests that Chinese intelligence operations had penetrated deep into the British political establishment, potentially compromising high-level security briefings. The case has also exposed tensions between different parts of the British state apparatus. There were conflicting claims about who was responsible for the decision not to publish the witness statements earlier. Government sources initially claimed that the Crown Prosecution Service had blocked publication, but the CPS firmly denied this, stating that the decision was entirely up to the government. This bureaucratic blame game has only added to the sense that the government has been caught flat-footed by the crisis. The back and forth between different agencies suggests a lack of coordination and clear decision-making at the highest levels of government. Such confusion is particularly damaging when it involves matters of national security. The broader implications of this scandal extend far beyond the immediate political damage to Starmer's government. The case has raised fundamental questions about Britain's approach to the Chinese threat and whether economic considerations are being allowed to compromise national security prosecutions. Critics argue that the government's reluctance to explicitly label China as a threat reflects a broader pattern of appeasement. China's intelligence operations against the UK have been a growing concern for British security services. The published documents detail extensive Chinese efforts to infiltrate British institutions and gather sensitive information. These activities represent a clear and present danger to UK national security, yet the government's response has been characterized by hesitation and political calculation. The collapse of this prosecution sends a troubling message about Britain's resolve in confronting Chinese espionage. If the UK cannot successfully prosecute clear cases of spying due to political sensitivities, it may embolden further Chinese intelligence operations. The deterrent effect of criminal prosecutions is severely undermined when cases collapse for non-legal reasons. Opposition politicians have not let up in their criticism of the government's handling of the affair. They've demanded full transparency about the decision-making process that led to the case's collapse and have called for a comprehensive review of Britain's approach to Chinese threats. The publication of the witness statements, while significant, has been dismissed as too little, too late. The scandal has also highlighted the complex relationship between Britain and China in the modern era. While China remains an important trading partner, its intelligence activities and authoritarian practices pose significant challenges to British interests. Balancing these competing considerations requires clear-eyed assessment and strong political leadership, qualities that critics argue have been lacking in this case. Looking ahead, this scandal is likely to have lasting implications for Britain's national security policy and its relationship with China. The government will see continued pressure to take a tougher stance on Chinese activities in the UK, while also managing the economic relationship between the two countries. The collapse of this prosecution has made this balancing act significantly more difficult. The case also raises questions about the adequacy of Britain's current legal framework for dealing with foreign espionage. If technical evidentiary requirements can derail major national security prosecutions, perhaps reforms are needed to ensure that the law keeps pace with evolving threats. This is particularly important given the sophisticated nature of modern intelligence operations. As the dust settles on this scandal, one thing is clear: Starmer's government has suffered significant damage to its credibility on national security matters. The perception that political considerations influenced a major espionage prosecution will be difficult to shake and may have long-term consequences for public trust in the government's ability to protect British interests. The publication of the witness statements may have temporarily quieted the immediate criticism, but the underlying questions about the government's priorities and competence remain unanswered.